Great, excellent. Okay, so I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes or so going over the first case of the season. As a reminder, our overarching topic for the year is about the Arctic, but the BDL writes individual cases, and so we got a very significant contribution from Mosey as well on a lot of the research for this case. Thank you, Mosey. And Josh Nixon, one of the other program managers, was our lead on writing the evidence packets. And so they're all of our staff know a bunch about this. We've debated a bunch, practiced with it, presented it at the Educator Institute, and the debaters who came to our summer camp also got to vet this a little bit. So we're pretty happy with how it turned out. And I think we'll be able to answer a lot of questions about it. But like Douglas said, if you have any questions as we're going, please ask them, unmute yourself and ask them, or put them in the chat. So I'm going to jump right into it. We're going to do a little video to learn about a certain element of hydrogen energy. And let me make sure I'm sharing my sound.
Would it be possible to make it larger, like make it like just a slideshow?
Sure, yes, good call. All right, and then share, advanced sharing options, more, share computer sound. Okay.
Okay, so there's green hydrogen and then there's blue hydrogen.
Sorry, can everyone hear that video? Okay.
And then there's black hydrogen and then grey and then pink and then I think someone said turquoise. All these politicians just keep talking about this apparent rainbow of hydrogen out there, but like, it's a colourless gas, right? So why are our discussions around it so colourful? And what does this all have to do with fighting the climate crisis? Okay, so a lot of people reckon that hydrogen is going to be the next big thing when it comes to energy. Mostly because unlike petrol or gas, it doesn't release harmful carbon into the air when you burn it. And actually its only byproduct is water. So that's amazing, right? Carbon neutral energy. But wait, there's a catch. See, pure hydrogen gas doesn't just really exist in the world naturally. It's almost always combined with other elements, usually with oxygen in the form of water or as part of a fossil fuel like coal or gas. So that's where the rainbow comes in. The colour tells you how the hydrogen gas was made in the first place. So while we're here, why don't we go through some of the important colours? Okay, first you have the most common types, black, brown and grey hydrogen. All of these processes take fossil fuels and use heat to strip the hydrogen out of them. Black uses black coal, brown uses brown coal and grey uses gas. This is currently the cheapest way to get hydrogen, but unfortunately the other byproduct of this production process is a heap of carbon dioxide, which is released into the atmosphere. Kind of puts a dampener on the whole environmentally friendly fuel thing, doesn't it? Now let's move on to blue hydrogen. This is also made with gas and actually uses the exact same process as grey hydrogen, but instead it captures that carbon dioxide that's released and stores it underground. Many politicians and energy companies love to rave about blue hydrogen, but the thing is, this ability to capture and store emissions is something that's been promised for a couple of decades now, but the technology really hasn't gotten very far. It's still way too expensive and hardly anyone is doing it. Scientists are skeptical it will ever take off in a major way, and basically they say that focusing on blue hydrogen is really just keeping fossil fuels going when what we need to be doing is finding alternatives. Finally, let's talk about green hydrogen. This uses a totally different process. Basically, you run an electrical current through water and break it up into hydrogen and oxygen. Now, obviously you need to get that electricity from somewhere, right? But if you get it from solar power or wind farms or another renewable source, then your hydrogen really is green. We did it! I mean, obviously this is the best choice, right? But the problem is green hydrogen is still generally considered to be pretty bloody expensive. But the good news is costs are coming down. So those are the biggest bands of the rainbow. Basically, just remember when it comes to the climate crisis, not all hydrogen is made equal. And just because something is using hydrogen as its energy source, doesn't automatically mean that it's carbon neutral.
All right, so that is a little bit of an intro to hydrogen as a fuel source. And it's what we're going to be debating about for the first half of the season. So I put a couple of comprehension check questions. And again, for time, since we want to make sure we get to everything, pick any of these 4 questions that you'd like and put an answer to one of them in the chat. So your comprehension check will be 25%. And yes, I see a question in the chat. Can this video be shared with the kids? So this is actually on the Boston Debate League YouTube page. We have a playlist of hydrogen videos. And so this is one of them at the moment. We're also working on expanding that list at the moment to find a little bit more. So students are welcome to watch any and all of those videos to help them learn more about hydrogen. But yes, if folks could just pick one of the comprehension check questions, any of them is fine, and put an answer to any of those in the chat, that'd be great. Or if anyone wants to unmute themselves and share an answer to one of the questions that they think. All right, yeah, so thank you, Paquita from Binka. That yes, black, brown, and gray depend on fossil fuels. That makes them bad, not so good. Green hydrogen, yes, is created when electricity is run through water, splitting it into hydrogen and oxygen. Tyler says no, pure hydrogen has to be created by some energy, at least according to the video. And all right, we got some answers on green. Not sure about existing in nature. Hydrogen is made, uses coal and gas, made equally. Yep. All right, great. Awesome. Thank you all. Excellent. All right. Okay, so yes, thank you. We'll run through those quickly. So does pure hydrogen exist in the world naturally? It is not mentioned at all in the video, but there are some places where, like Alaska, we think, hydrogen may exist buried underground in a almost pure form. Not entirely pure, but that like if you kind of poked a hole in the right place in the ground and let the gas come out, that pure hydrogen or very close to it would come out. It might need to be purified a little bit, but we get very close. Now that is exciting because it doesn't require us to take anything that is existing right now. Any existing processes of creating pure hydrogen can all be skipped over. So what we're looking at for this year is the idea of developing hydrogen infrastructure. So that could mean one of 2 things. It could mean doing this sort of mining for hydrogen in Alaska. That would mean trying to access the pure deposits of hydrogen that exist underground. Or it could mean increasing the infrastructure around some of the different colors of hydrogen and making it easier to produce hydrogen in those various processes. So that's the piece about pure hydrogen. There are a lot of fossil fuel created hydrogen processes. There is blue hydrogen, which is slightly better, so uses fossil fuels, but captures the fossil fuels afterwards. And then green hydrogen, which uses electricity to make a pure hydrogen. All right, on to the activity. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the summary. Actually, no, we'll do the 4 corners. So based on the video and what else you know about it, the government should invest in hydrogen fuel infrastructure so that more of it can be produced in the US. All right, what I'm going to ask you to do is, this is something you could do with debaters in practice as a sort of intro. You could show them this video and do this 4 corners. We're going to do a very abbreviated version of 4 corners, which is just going to be, you put your corner that you would go to in the chat. Again, in a real debate practice, you would give students as much or as little information about a topic as you wanted, put a claim on the board, and then ask them to go to a corner, share with whoever else is at that corner, and then come back. and share the reasoning. But what we're going to do for an online version of Four Corners is just put, do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with this claim based on what you know? And what you know may literally be just the video you watched. That might be the only thing you know about hydrogen fuel. I know before we started researching this case, that was really one of the very few things I knew about. I didn't know very much at all. And part of that is we hope a lot of students will learn about it as well. But if you know a lot about it already, maybe you've already looked at our evidence packet or done some research on your own outside of it, or maybe you happen to be, a fuel expert. You might know more and you might have a different reasoning other than just that video. So, all right. Can I have any brave souls from the chat who shared their corner to unmute and tell us why you said strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree? Anyone want to go ahead and do that?
I would like to break the ice and start first. Are
Go
you able
for
to
it,
hear
Annie.
me? I feel
Yes,
like
we can hear you.
I said I agree with invest hydrogen infrastructure because the United States has a lot of money, and a lot of that money is into things that are harming the environment, such as war and the military, and things that don't really build people up. And in order for us to experience another day, like we need to experiment like with the possibilities of what could change our global, like our geographical like infrastructure.
Yeah, I like it, right? We have an opportunity to be a global leader on this perhaps, and let's put some of our money towards it. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else want to share? It could be agree or disagree.
I guess on the other side, on the disagree side of things, it's really based on like more of my knowledge and ideas of like how electric power is going and how like thinking about like like nuclear plants to produce electric power and using resources, namely because from my experience with like they made cars that ran off of natural gas for a while, but then it like all fell apart. And I feel like for hydrogen as well, you'd have to have these specialized cars, whereas like we've already got electric cars going. So yeah, I just kind of don't know personally if that's where I think we're going, but yeah.
Yeah, perhaps it's like over specialized and wouldn't be worth investing in. Maybe there are other things we should put our money into. Yeah. And fun fact, there is a video about hydrogen powered cars that do currently exist in California right now. So if you want to read and see more about those, and also Red Bull has been doing some testing for a high powered hydrogen car for like racing purposes. So there's some cool things that students might be interested on that. Great, thank you both for sharing. I'm just going to keep moving along. So we shared out. And this is what I would ask students would be, what was convincing? Would you, now that you heard what you heard from other people, would you change corners, that sort of thing? That's what I might do as a coach. Won't do that today, but you could do that. And before we dig into the evidence packet, I'm going to go over the affirmative and negative summaries very quickly to give you sort of a little bit of an intro to the case, and then we'll look back at the evidence packet in a second. So the short version, the very, very short version of this case on the affirmative, and the affirmative is the team arguing that the plan is a good idea. If you're a brand new coach in policy debate, we argue on two sides, and the affirmative side is saying that we should do a certain plan to make the world a better place. The negative team is saying we should not do that specific plan, not that we shouldn't make the world a better place, but that plan specifically will not do that or might even make things worse. So that's the difference between affirmative and negative. So the affirmative case that your newer debaters are assigned and must argue in the first few tournaments is that right now, Alaska has large deposits of hydrogen gas stored underground, we think, and the gases could be mined with minimal environmental consequences. Global warming due to greenhouse gas emissions is destroying our planet. And so hydrogen gas is uniquely positioned to help us reduce greenhouse gas emissions because it can replace fossil fuels in areas that other clean energy sources cannot. So for example, you cannot stick a really big battery into an airplane, even if it has a lot of electricity from wind or solar power, because it's just too heavy. You won't be able to fly something easily at a large scale with electric power. So since most renewable energy currently relies on electricity, hydrogen could step in. You could fly planes using hydrogen fuel. You could operate heavy machinery with hydrogen fuel. And those are things you can't do with wind or solar power, no matter how big they become, unless you get really efficient batteries, and that would be a totally different investment. So our plan is that the US should invest in hydrogen fuel infrastructure so that it is more accessible and usable. Now, based on all that I just shared, you might have some questions. You might think, there are some weak points in that argument. That's sort of the idea. We don't want an open and shut case for the debaters to be arguing. We want something that's fairly well balanced between affirmative and negative. So there are some holes in this argument, and negative points out a few of those. So here are some of the main negative arguments you'll see in the packet. There's a lot wrong with the AF plan. We don't know how much hydrogen is in Alaska. We think there's a lot. We think that there's evidence that there might be a lot, but we're not sure. Hydrogen currently uses fossil fuels or requires large amounts of electricity to be purified into something that's usable itself. That was kind of from the video earlier. If we were to invest a lot in hydrogen infrastructure, that would either require us to mine it significantly from the ground, or to make it from other processes which use other forms of energy. And then finally, there are all sorts of arguments about sort of that Tyler alluded to a little bit, about the inefficiency and expensiveness of hydrogen as a fuel source, right? Just the same way that natural gas cars were not super successful, someone may argue that hydrogen powered cars may not be something worth investing in the future. And as we move up divisions, your high school junior varsity and your middle school varsity students will get some extra arguments they can make on the negative side. So one of them is about the downside of any sort of mining in general. And then the other one is about tax credits. So giving an option for the negative team to say, we want to solve the same climate change problem, but here's a different way to solve it. And that would be sort of credits that give more of an incentive to invest in other renewable energy projects instead of hydrogen. So I'm going to stop there for a second and stop sharing my screen for a second as well. I shared a lot of information about the case. Is there any questions immediately before we do one quick activity to dig into the case a little bit, which you can also then do with your students later on? But any questions that people have right at this moment?
I have a question that was
Good. Yeah, go for it, Annie.
how are the topics like chosen for each year, and is there a like I don't know if there's an action item or like an action step like for students who are interested in like science or yeah, like yeah.
Thank you. It's breaking up for me a little bit, but I will answer both the parts of that, and just let me know if I missed anything. How's the topic chosen? So there's a national topic that all students who are doing this format policy debate do across the US. Boston Debate League helps do the vote for the state of Massachusetts, which is one voting body out of, so we get essentially one vote per state on the topic. And there's a process that includes, if students have a particular interest in creating a topic for everyone to debate in the future, they can contribute and help write their own paper, presented at the topic conference. At that topic conference, they narrow it down. And then Mosey was there, yes, this year, and is also going to be contributing a paper in the future. So if you have ideas about what Mosey should write about, share them. And they narrow the topic to a few at that point, and then from there, we send out a vote. And actually, you'll see your email in the next week or so, the vote for next year has already started. So there are 5 potential topics for next season that will be narrowed down to 2, and then a final ballot to narrow them down to 1. So it's a big vote across the country. And then within that, once there's a national topic selected, that's the resolution. BDL staff talks with a few stakeholders to pick some what we think are engaging cases. And we think that this case can be made particularly engaging to students because everyone knows about climate change, but some of the like discussions around it are probably ones that the students are used to and maybe even a little bored of at this time, right? Like we didn't want to do just like a solar panels case because students mostly know what those are and they're probably not super exciting, but hydrogen is the kind of fuel that, you know, could power, you know, a whole bunch of things that other renewable energy sources cannot, right? It could fly planes, maybe high-powered sports cars, for example. So it could be used for exciting purposes, but it also could help replace things and fill a gap that is currently not being filled. So we think that there's a reason to independently learn about it.
Th this might be slightly off topic, but one of the things that I am interested in is this national body. Like
Yeah.
there are so many organizations that do debate, and I am wondering if you could fill us in slightly more on the structure, because I'm just curious.
Yes, I will share in the chat information about the topic selection process. Because I personally think it is very interesting. So the National Federation of High Schools, who's the sort of governing body for the policy debate topic selection, and this link is probably for the most recent meeting that happened, or maybe for last year's, but if you click through, you'll also be able to find the information for next year's topic selection. And it just goes through how the meeting works, how the submissions work, what the potential topics were in previous years, what the potential topics are for next year, that kind of thing. Yeah. Cool. All right. So with these last few minutes before we take a short break, I'm going to do an activity with you all that you can do with your students as well. Because part of what we want you to leave here with is a sense of like, how do I coach this with my students? So I'm going to share my screen once again. All right, one thing we developed for this year is an evidence packet scavenger hunt. So together we'll be researching the essential questions that guided the construction of the packet. And I'm actually not on that yet. Let me drop this. This should be viewable to everyone. I'm going to put this right in the chat. If you want to open up that document, go right ahead. So the way we decided what evidence was going to be put into the packet was we figured out like what are the essential questions debaters might want to know and have answered while doing this debate. Things like what is hydrogen gas? How can hydrogen be used as a fuel? What is it used for currently? And 14 more questions. So what we're going to ask you all to do right now is if you are at your computer and available to do this, open up the link that I just put in the chat. And what I want you to do with your students in practice, you might have them pick 4 or 5 questions and then split them up into groups, have them research these together in the evidence packet. What I'm going to ask you to do to try it out is just pick one question out of this list of 16 that you're interested in. Pick one question, look for an answer in the evidence packet, which is linked here on page 2. And then in the chat, put the question you chose, the question number you chose, and a short answer to that question. Now, one thing that I clarify in the scavenger hunt as well is that a lot of these are very long, open-ended questions that you couldn't possibly expect students to come up with answers for in 5 minutes, let alone an entire practice. So what I ask you to do is just come up with a single claim that partially answers the question, if it is a more open-ended question. Find a piece of evidence that supports that claim and write your reasoning. So if I wanted to say something like, how could hydrogen be used as a fuel? A potential claim would be, it can be used to fuel cars, and I have evidence in the packet that talks about how it is currently being used right now in California to fuel cars. And that's my sort of claim and evidence. Excuse me. So I'm going to turn that over to everybody else and take the next 5 minutes to do this activity. Again, I'll put the directions in the chat so everyone has it. All right. Scavenger hunt. Answer one single. And I will say you have until 5:52. Sorry, 4:52. And again, I'm fully acknowledging this is not enough time to do this activity, but I want you to at least get a sense of what this activity would be like for your students. So give it a shot.